Welcome to Camp Nightmare Fuel. Grab a beverage and take a seat around the campfire, where you'll hear forgotten stories, haunted whispers, and unsolved mysteries of small-town America come to life. I'm your host, Barber, and today we're heading back into the deep, foggy forests of the Pacific Northwest to uncover the tale of a spirit who wanders the shoreline, still waiting for something or someone to return. Tonight's episode is Vanished in the Fog, the Lady of Crescent Lake. Before we get started, I want to say hello to my co-host and co-creator of Camp Nightmare Fuel, Kenny Thibodeau, also known as Lorde Starfox. Kenny is an investigative photojournalist for the North American Dogman Project. He's also the creator of Midnight Lycanthropy and the director of the Midnight Society, of which I am a member. I'll drop his YouTube links in the comments. How's it going tonight?
Wow, listen to that right there. Epic stuff. I appreciate the shout out right there. It saves me from having to do, what does JJ say? The shameless plug, right? So great stuff. I'm doing pretty well, my friend. Just busy like always, such as yourself. Been doing a lot of editing and also some celebrating that Team USA got the gold in hockey. What have you been up to?
Well, that is really exciting for you. I know, definitely. And we've just been busy. We have a new granddaughter as of last Monday. Wait, I'm trying to think, Tuesday. And so then I had my grandson, and we kept him for a few days. That was so much fun. And now we're back at our house on the Olympic Peninsula. So I love it here, though. This is my happy, calm place. So I'm I think I'm ready to let everything go and live in a 510 square foot cabin.
This is excellent. It sounds like you've been really busy. I love it. What about you, Mr. Barber?
We had a busy weekend. We did the whole Comic-Con and to my joy, doing the whole Logan dress up. I had at least between 8 and 12 little kids want their picture taken with Logan and stuff like that. And then also had some major Bigfoot stuff happen and took a skeptic out to examine some stuff. He owns a heavy rental equipment. And because there was a piece of pipe, I was telling him about it, and he's like, well, somebody, moved it with a piece of equipment. And I'm like, no, they didn't. And anyway, so I said, well, go out there with me, and you tell me how they did this. How did they get this there? And we walk out and go through the hills and through the trees, and he's looking, and he said, where was it? And I showed him pictures. I got pictures for the last 4 years where this thing's been at. And he just looked at me, he says, I got nothing.
That's so great when that happens, Yeah,
he says, I don't believe in, Bigfoot, but I can't explain this.
Wow. That's really cool. Wow. Tell the listeners that may not know what did you do this weekend? Tell them about your character and you look just so happy, like you were having the time of your life. I love it.
The whole thing started with someone telling me last October, you should dress up as Wolverine. So I kind of played with it a little bit and just did the cheap plastic stuff. And it turned out okay. And I thought, you know what? And I have a friend who has a middle child who's kind of middle of a divorce and whatnot. So you know how the middle child will kind of get lost. And he was supposed to be my little Deadpool. So that was the whole reason I was going to dress up.
Oh, wow.
Went a little more all out just so he and I could go do the Deadpool and Wolverine thing. Well, then he turned around and there was a passing of a family friend, so he couldn't go. And I thought, well, heck with it. I had all the stuff, so I decided to dress up anyway. And, I figured I would just go for a couple hours, but it was such a great time with, everybody just at Comic-Con, and everybody was relaxed. They were having fun, and, random people coming up and wanting a picture, and, the little kids wanting pictures it really touched my heart that anyone was glad I went, because I did the whole dye job for the hair and the dyed the beard, got that all trimmed up, so I looked like Logan from the Logan movie and not the typical Wolverine. And every so often you would hear somebody say, "Oh, there's Wolverine," and it's like, no, that's Logan. So you could tell the hardcore fans, and
Right.
he checked out there a few times, and it was pretty hilarious because the claws were steel, they just weren't sharp.
They looked like whoa.
I mean, not sharp. They were pointy. I mean,
wow.
I definitely could have accidentally scared somebody.
Yeah.
But I'm standing there talking to security, and this was during the second safety check, and then it comes across the radio. Hey, there's a big buff Wolverine walking around. Can somebody check him? And everybody was on radio. Well, we already got him. So I planned on going out there for like 2 hours, and I wound up being out there almost 6.
Wow.
I take my picture and give me a piece of art if you could put me on the website and stuff like that. So.
Yeah. That's so nice that happened because, I feel like we get so kind of disillusioned in these, sometimes in these communities, if you go to something that you are expecting to, for it to be awesome like that was, and then you go and you're like, oh, wow, this is kind of a bummer. And I don't know if that's happened to you guys, but it has to me. And I'm like, this is disappointing. But when you go and you're not expecting it, and then this, kind of thing happens, that's the greatest thing. So that's awesome.
It was. It made me feel useful for a change.
You shouldn't say that. Brian.
Pretty amazing. Kenny came up with a good idea about, maybe doing that for a kids' hospital, dressing up. And
that's awesome. Wow.
Wow. So we're
Oh.
kicking that idea around. I gave the idea to the local comic shop, and they're actually going to look around with their members to see if they got anybody who's maybe 1 or 2 more and take like the X-Men in there, or
Wow.
something fun for the kids. So
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. That's such a cool thing. But Brian, don't ever say that you feel like useful. Are you kidding me? Like that? You're amazing, isn't he, Kenny? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Brian's definitely the man for sure. I was the one that, definitely tried to point him in that direction because, being a big Swayman guy, Swayman's all about spending time in the children's hospital. And actually, I was telling Brian a little story a while ago, real quick, is that up in Maine where I am, well, it's called Elfon up in Orono where the Black Bears play. And I got to see Swayman up there a few times, but there was a little kid that had something going on with his hearing where loud noises were too much, but at the same time, he couldn't really hear the best either. And Swayman heard about that and got him a special pair of headphones and also bought him a UMaine jersey. And there's a picture where Swayman finds the kid in the crowd and he goes up to the glass and does the goalie hug through the glass with the little kid. It's awesome.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow.
Yeah, so it's good to have a platform and do something really good with it. So
yeah, but it is amazing when people with everything else that they're keeping it real, they're keeping it important, the things that do matter in life. And I wanted to again welcome Brian Barber as our new official co-host on Camp Nightmare Fuel. Brian, it's so good to have you as a permanent camp counselor with Lorde Starfox and I here at Camp Nightmare Fuel. Brian is also a member of the Midnight Society over at Lorde Starfox channel, and Brian can be found at his YouTube channel, Bigfoot's Barbershop. Anything else you want to tell us about yourself, Brian, for any new listeners?
Want to find out about how I got in trouble for feeding the bears? Go check YouTube out.
Yeah.
Or the Sweet and Low box if you want.
I was going to say,
the Sweet and Low box.
Why do we call Brian Sweet and Low?
Yeah,
that's great. We do. We'll have to put that into one of our segments. Maybe our next episode we'll have to tell the viewers about that because everybody's going to want to know if they don't. It's a great story.
Yeah, that came up on a podcast that went, it was the show you were doing.
Yeah, that's right. Daryl, right? Yeah, right. I love them, and I love that I love that you were on there, and we were talking about that. That was like, wow, that was fun. Gonna get right into tonight's episode. Now, in the last episode, I introduced you to the true story of Starvation Heights, which occurred in Olalla, Washington State. Now, for tonight's show, we're staying in Washington State, but this time I'll be taking you to Crescent Lake, which is about 112 miles northwest of where we were last time in Olalla. Crescent Lake is located on the Olympic Peninsula in Port Angeles in northwest Washington State. The lake is entirely located within the territory of the Olympic National Park. It sits between evergreens and mountains in western Washington, a place where time seems to slow and the mist hangs low. It's absolutely breathtaking there. I've been there quite a few times, and I've been there. Pristine, like glacial lake. And the water is so crystal clear, but it's also so deep, and dark in some spots. The locals used to say that there was no bottom, but a recent survey of the bottom of the lake
showed that it was not quite 600 feet. Now, 600 feet is still very respectable for a glacier-formed lake, though,
Tales about Lake Crescent are old. Like when the Clallam tribes, 10,000 years ago, their oral story told about
how they were fighting against the Quileute people.
And the Mount Storm Mountain got angry and threw a boulder at them to stop their fighting,
splitting the valley in two, which formed Lake Sutherland and Lake Crescent.
Beyond the beauty, Lake Crescent holds a secret, a legend passed down for nearly a century.
According to the legend, Lake Crescent never gave up its victims who perished under the icy waters. From then all the way up to present.
And for many generations, the natives didn't want to go anywhere near the lake. Although there actually is some truth to the story, there really was an earthquake at the time of the battle that split the valley. Is there also some truth to the legend about the lake holding on to its, we'll say, unalived? In 1929, a couple driving along the lake went missing, and the case remained a complete mystery for decades. That was until 2002, when they found their 1927 Chevrolet under the surface of the lake. But there were no trace of their bodies, nothing ever found. But the most famous story of all about Lake Crescent is about the Lady of the Lake, the true story about when the lake did release a body. They call her the Lady of Lake Crescent, a ghostly figure seen drifting along the shore in the early morning fog, her long white dress trailing over the water, her face veiled by her hair. Witnesses say she appears just before sunrise and just as suddenly vanishes. Unlike many ghost stories, this one has roots in a real disappearance, and the macabre series of events and findings guarantee to raise the interest of even the most skeptical science-based researcher. The Lady of the Lake is a true story of the disappearance of Hallie Illingworth, the tale of a body that turned to soap, and the hunt for has fascinated readers and storytellers for generations, and it's one of the most enduring legends on the Olympic Peninsula. Eventually, the investigation circled back to an obvious subject, her husband, Monty Illingworth. Hallie Illingworth was a Port Angeles area woman known for her great beauty and her quiet demeanor. She was born on January 8th, 1901, to a farm couple in Greenville, Kentucky. As a young adult, Hallie repeatedly moved west, searching for a better life. She's believed to have arrived on the Olympic Peninsula in early 1936 after two failed marriages. Wound up waitressing at the Lake Crescent Tavern, now known as the Lake Crescent Lodge, where she met Monty Illingworth. He was a beer truck driver who had a well-known reputation of being, like a ladies' man.
Hallie was instantly smitten with this man,
who went by the nickname of Monty. So after a short whirlwind courtship, Monty became Hallie's third husband when the couple married on June 16th, 1936. Now, the two had a volatile marriage. Just 5 months into it, the couple got into a pre-dawn fight that was so fierce, the police were called to break it up. Hallie showed up for work at the restaurant with bruises on her face and arms. Unfortunately, this was just the start of the physical abuse Hallie suffered at the hands of Monty. Her coworkers became, increasingly concerned about her well-being.
Hallie started showing up for work repeatedly with horrible looking ugly bruises, and sometimes she even had black eyes.
Just a few days before Christmas in 1937, without saying a word to her friends or coworkers or even family, Hallie vanished. 2 versions of the circumstances surrounding her disappearance were given by her husband, Monty. He told Hallie's family that he had discovered his wife was having an affair and claimed that she had run off with the other man. This seemed entirely plausible, to those in her family that knew her well, given the seemingly constant string, of violent altercations during their brief marriage. Now, Monty told Hallie's local friends and co-workers at the Lake Crescent Tavern that Hallie had gone back to Oregon to celebrate the holidays with family. I could find no reason as to why Monty's various versions of the facts, didn't raise more suspicion, didn't create more controversy.
It was said that her coworkers and her friends were actually happy when they heard the version that Monty told to Hallie's family of her running off with another man because of this long string of circumstances. And they were, they were like, oh, yay, she got out of that horrible situation.
The mystery remains why, though, never a missing persons or a police report were ever filed. As the months went by, without a word from Hallie, her family members, who she was extremely close with, they grew increasingly concerned. This was not at all characteristic of Hallie whatsoever. Shortly after Hallie's disappearance, but long enough for the initial attention paid to it to seem to have dropped off, Monty moved to California with a woman he had met in Port Angeles. Monty's actions caused quite a stir among Hallie's close friends and raised a lot of suspicions in the community. The woman who Monty ran off with was the exact same woman who was the source of many of the marital altercations between Monty and Hallie. Hallie had confided in her close friends that she discovered her husband's romantic involvement with this woman. Some said that Hallie claimed that upon her discoverance of the affair, Monty remained unapologetic and he refused to end it. Now, others claim that he had steadfastly denied any actual romantic involvement with this other woman, referring to her as merely an acquaintance that Hallie had sort of fabricated a wild rumor about to divert attention away from her own affair with this mystery man that she supposedly ran off with. For family and friends, the relationship between Monty and his new girlfriend, how that all and when it started, it really at that point was of no consequence because the fact remained that Hallie was still missing and had not reached out to anyone, again, which was not her nature or her character. The only person who claimed to know any details about her fleeing town with the mystery man was her husband, Monty. So unfortunately for the friends, loved ones of Hallie, and even some local law enforcement, without a body or any further evidence of criminal intent surrounding her mysterious disappearance, there really was nothing that anyone could do. On July 6th, 1940, almost 3 years after Hallie disappeared, 2 fishermen were out on Lake Crescent. A mysterious blanketed bundle in the shape of a body floated to the top of the surface near them.
Now, they could, I guess, tell that this was an actual body, or they suspected that. So the fishermen, immediately said, we're going to have to contact the police about this.
So they immediately call authorities. And upon opening the blankets, the authorities found a woman's body. Now, it was obvious that the woman had been, but the real mystery was the condition of her body. So although her face was unrecognizable, her body had not yet begun to decompose. Her skin and her flesh were the consistency of like putty, that could be easily scooped away. The woman's body had also been hog-tied with heavy rope. The public's imagination was caught by the grisly discovery and became known as Lady of the Lake. It was a very fitting appellation for a mystery woman who had emerged from Lake Crescent, a cold, deep lake that had a reputation for never giving up its unalived. The body was taken to Port Angeles, where a young medical student, Harlan McNutt, examined it. He noted that the upper part of her face, her upper lip, and her nose were gone. But because her hands had been exposed, the tips of the fingers were also gone. There was no way to get fingerprints and no way to tell what the woman looked like. And then there was the unusual state of the corpse. The woman's flesh had turned to something like ivory soap. McNutt later said, describing a condition known as saponification, a soap-like condition resulted from minerals in the lake interacting with the fats in the woman's body. The lake's near-freezing temperatures had virtually refrigerated her corpse for those 3 years.
Visual inspection of the body and a subsequent autopsy showed that the woman had met a violent end.
Her neck was bruised and discolored. Her chest showed evidence of extensive hemorrhage. She had been beaten and though there were little with which to make an identification, the body had a distinctive upper dental plate, fortunately. It proved to be the clue that led to authorities identified the woman as Hallie Illingworth, thanks to an alert South Dakota dentist who identified the dental plate as one he had made for her years before. Investigators closed in on Monty Illingworth, Hallie's husband, now living in Long Beach, California. On October 26, 1941, he was arrested and taken into custody by Los Angeles Sheriff's deputies. Not long after, he was charged with He was brought back to Port Angeles and put on trial for Hallie in Clallam County Superior Court. The trial began on February 24th, 1942, and it was so sensational that it completed with news from the front lines of World War II. Trial developments were splashed daily across the front pages of local newspapers. The media, it was just a complete frenzy. Spectators would arrive early. Homemakers, teenagers, and curiosity seekers converged on the courtroom for the 9-day trial.
Monty's defense was that this victim was not even the same woman as Hallie, and the last he saw Hallie, she was alive.
But the dentist from South Dakota was a credible witness. He insisted the dental plate found on the murdered woman belonged to Hallie. Moreover, Hallie's friends identified clothes worn as belonging to Hallie. Now, the key piece of evidence, physical evidence, was the rope that was used to tie up Hallie before she was dropped into Lake Crescent. Monty had borrowed 50 feet of ropes from a storekeeper at the lake, and the store actually still had remnants from the rope. The fibers of the rope Monty had borrowed and the rope used to hog-tie Hallie's body were an exact match. It took the jurors just 4 hours to reach a verdict. On March 5th, 1942, the jury found Illingworth guilty of second-degree. He was sentenced to life imprisonment at Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla. He served 9 years in prison and was paroled in 1951. He died on November 5th, 1974 in Los Alamitos, California. A close friend of Hallie's later opined that her not likely to be premeditated, that Hallie and Monty probably had a fight in their apartment that December night in 1937. The fight had taken a violent turn and Monty. Hollis Foltz, a criminologist with the Washington State Attorney General's office, who helped investigate, he maintained that Monty tried to conceal the crime by placing his wife's lifeless body in the trunk of his car and driving to Lake Crescent. Monty stopped in the vicinity of what is now the present-day log cabin resort, where he wrapped his wife's body in blankets and tied the bundle with the rope. Monty put Hallie's body in a rowboat, attached weights to the bundle, and rowed into deep water. He then dropped the bundle into the dark water. Rumors circulated during the investigation that Monty didn't act alone, but no one other than Monty was ever charged with the crime. Since the discovery of her body, locals and visitors alike have reported sightings of a woman in white by the water's edge. Some say she walks barefoot along the dock of the old lodge, her face pale, eyes searching. Others have seen her standing knee-deep in the lake, as if waiting to be pulled under once again. A former night security guard claimed he saw her reflection in the lodge's window, even though no one stood behind him. Campers have awoken to the sound of a woman weeping near the shoreline, only to find nothing but fog. Skeptics call it imagination, tricks of light, coincidence, or perhaps a ghost story fed by guilt and legend. But those who have seen her say otherwise. They say the Lady of Crescent Lake, it isn't just a story, it is a warning. Now, I could find no solid data on the total amount of in Lake Crescent, but I did find an alarming and steady string of reports. I'm talking like, I want to say at least 6 a year. Every year, I'm not kidding. I was like, what in the world? Souls of swimmers, kayakers, and even those on motorized vessels, they've lost their lives to the cold, deep waters of Lake Crescent. Sudden immersion in the 50-degree water will impact a person's breathing, and quickly, you're not able to do anything to move your extremities. You're just, you can't do a thing. Swimmers are encouraged to use the utmost caution and to adopt, the buddy system with make sure you have a buddy to swim with. Operators of all watercraft should always wear a life jacket and understand the risks of in a body of water that's full of underwater hazards, wind-driven currents and waves, and the very low water temperature. Now, despite all of this, if you ever find yourself in the area, make it a point to stop in to the antique-filled Lake Crescent Lodge, which still retains the elegance of yesterday. We've stopped in several times for delicious, absolutely delicious meals in the restaurant. I've also thought it would be fun to stop in for maybe cocktails. I've seen people sitting, in their lobby. They have this huge, beautiful stone fireplace that I believe is original to the lodge. People just sitting around, having cocktails and having some appetizers. And also, now weather permitting, I've never seen this, but one of the times that we were there having a meal, the waitress had said, "Oh, if you can hang around like 2 more hours, you're going to see the most amazing sunset." And so they have this cute little cozy, like sun. Well, it's not little; it's massive. It's just grand and beautiful. But this massive sun porch that you can sit on and watch the sunset. I mean, that's just like the coolest thing. Like, talk about why do I want to have a sun porch? Really, just for that reason. Right. So now, if you choose to stay, you might want to seek out evidence of the Lady of the Lake for yourself. The lodge also offers a really wide range of accommodations, from cozy, historically, period designed rooms to more like modern suites, like very contemporary, to these stunningly replicated cabins that were built as perfect reproductions of the original cabins that were built on the property grounds. In fact, their most popular accommodations are the Roosevelt fireplace cabins, which are listed on the National Register for historic places. While the lodge itself shutters for the winter, these cabins remain open year-round and also on weekends. But you'll have to reserve one well in advance because they're always booked up. I promise you would be hard-pressed, honestly, to find a more picturesque lakeside view than you'll find at Lake Crescent. And I can say that having lived like all over the United States. I really have never seen anything like that. So if you decide to book an overnight stay, or if you find yourself camping near Crescent Lake, listen closely in the early morning fog. You just might hear footsteps behind you or a soft whispered voice. You may catch a glimpse of white vanishing into the mist. Until next time, keep your eyes open and don't follow footsteps into the fog. So what do you guys think? Lord Starfox, what do you think about this? That is so bizarre with the saponification.
All that is hence our title.
That's absolutely right.
Great stuff right there. Great information. I definitely enjoy how you presented that for sure. And a little bit of some disturbing information that ties into, and you made some references about soap. Well, over in France, before they started putting the corpses down in the catacombs, they were having massive issues with bodies just basically putting some sort of liquidy substance all throughout the graveyards, and it smelled horrible. It was making the food sour. So what they ended up doing is started to take that substance and they turned it into soap as well as candles. So as you had mentioned, that soapy like substance, when it was mixed with the proper minerals or chemicals, that would occur. So again,
that's so
right there.
disgusting. Oh gosh.
So bizarre though. So that whole entire thing is just demented on so many levels for sure. And it seemed like this individual had definitely plotted out what he was trying to do. So if he was put into a proper judicial system, I mean, that would have definitely been premeditated for sure. And the whole entire thoughts of what you were saying with the bodies of people, unfortunately not being able to breathe underwater, I feel as if we were able to get proper numbers on that. All those really old lakes where people have been around for quite some time are going to have some sort of dark lore attached to that, meaning like up here, there's an area in Sebago Lake called Fry's Leap. There's two different stories about it. The one that I'm going to roll with is Fry was part of the indigenous culture up here, and he was being chased by some Westerners, and he leapt off this huge cliff into the lake, and he survived. But there's also tales up here of a woman that was indigenous, and she lost somebody she loved, and she ended up, no longer existing on purpose up here in a river, in the Saco River, which is supposed to have some sort of paranormal stuff. So again, I mean, it's pretty gnarly for sure. What do you think, Barber?
Two things. I've actually heard about the body turned into like a soapy substance. There is a shipwreck up in Grand Isle, Picture Rock in the UP on Lake Superior.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a ship that's over 400 feet deep. It was lost for 50 years. And divers finally found it, and they went diving, and inside the wreck, in the engine room, the whole ship is intact, mind you, they think was the engineer, and he's just kind of floating statically, but he's perfectly preserved.
Oh my God.
But this is where it gets creepy, and maybe have to look farther. Every time somebody goes down there, they swear he moves. And so they actually put cameras on this guy because there's no currents, no way for the water to move inside the wreck. And the arms and the head have been caught on camera moving several inches a few times over 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Now, the other thing was, you've heard the term history repeats itself with this story.
Right.
Remember Lacey Peterson?
Yes.
Scott Peterson?
Similar. Yeah.
I mean, talk about the whole thing, unalive, taken out in a rowboat.
Yep.
Over the thing. It's like, she supposedly went and saw family, and then supposedly turning up, floating up on the shore. And
yes, and that was a case where he had severely misjudged or the currents, and that was like, thank you, Lord. That I mean, he was brought right back, and her little boy were brought right back to where they, where that creep entered the water, and that was just such like poetic justice, and he never admitted to the fact that that he did that. I didn't mean to just hijack this whole thing about your point. I'm sorry, Brian,
no,
but that really bothers me. Like, it's terrible. It's very egregious. And nobody, he never admitted this, but people are like, this is definitely it, because he was very much into, the tides and the current and stuff, but he never really was that good with the information he had. So,
it's another case where they underestimated the strength of the rope.
Yes.
I mean, I was sitting there going through these details, getting ready for the show, and I'm like, did Scott Peterson read about this? And this is how he
right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Because I wonder if that would be similar. I bet you that, this is not salt water. And then where you up in Michigan, that would not be salt water either, right? No.
Yeah, it's a freshwater thing. It's from
So it wouldn't be
acidity or alkaline, I guess.
It would be seawater where Lacey Peterson. But that's even better if you want to get rid of a body, because a body will be completely devoured in, I don't even know. We wouldn't even imagine how quick in salt water and unactive, biologically. Anyway,
you literally just
so terrifying.
Touched on what I was going to bring up real quick, because again, you have that case with, what was it, Natalie Hathaway or Holloway?
Oh, yes, Holloway.
Same thing, where that judge's son, I believe he was a judge in the Netherlands. They're pretty sure that
Vandersloot, I think it was.
Did it, but same thing though. Unfortunately, once you put something out in an ecosystem where things are consuming other things, again, that's why it's really hard in general just to find any sort of remains of anything in the ocean unless it's washed up to shore. So messed up stuff.
But they have prosecuted people without bodies. So, some of these guys really got away with it. And it makes you, it's very...
Yeah, and the fact you only did, 4 years of a life sentence?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
sickening. But manslaughter, what is manslaughter? That just amazes me that that manslaughter sentences are so short, like 4 years. What the heck?
Some people don't even get any time for it. They get like probation.
Yeah.
Yes. I am not law enforcement, so anyone out there that's listening, definitely correct anything. Yet, from my understanding, manslaughter means you did not mean to unalive somebody, and then you have the next level up where it was more of a reaction, where you unalive somebody, and then you have the next step up where it was premeditated, where they can track you, planning this for long periods of time.
I don't know if it's everywhere, but I know in Michigan you've got voluntary and involuntary.
Yes. And like
voluntary is just like a total accident or something, where voluntary means you took actions that could cause, DUI.
Yep.
Where you're going to get for voluntary manslaughter because you knew your actions could cause potential.
Right.
Whereas if, you're up on the roof throwing a bowling ball that pins on your flat roof and it cracks somebody in the melon and
yes.
Yeah.
This was also at a period in time, unfortunately, where I feel like women weren't respected, meaning that could have also given this guy some leniency, meaning, I don't know, maybe the community thought so-and-so was a stand-up guy and he could never do this. And I don't know. It's just popped into my head as we were talking more.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Go ahead, Brian.
I was going to say, if I remember reading right, everybody knew he was a womanizer, but at the same time, it sounded just from what you sent me, Barb, and a little bit like she knew how to party quite a bit herself.
Yeah.
Had a reputation for it. And the fact that you're looking at the 1930s and now she's on her third marriage.
Yeah, that was talk about scandalous, I'm sure, but yeah. And then, and I wonder, I wonder what the true story is with all of this. I mean, we know what, okay, here's the facts, but it makes you, was she much more innocent than they made her appear? Did they aggravate everything to make it seem like, well, she had it coming to her,
Of course they did.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, I'm like,
look at the time frame.
Yeah.
You would like to think that in a future date, like right now as the present, it would be different. yet when you rewind, I mean, it is unfortunately documented in part of history at those points in time that it was not really liked by certain powerful males when women were able to have a voice and such. Unfortunately, it's the way the past was in certain places.
Absolutely. And you still have that to this day. It's just, and it's not only in this situation, like, against women, it's, like many groups, men, women, whatever, kids, and a lot of the times the most egregious things that are happening, they are never, kind of like revealed, except if they come out in some sort of like a lawsuit, or like if there's some sort of criminal act and there's, but yeah, I know. Because I mean, I'm sure you guys have had the same situation. Like I had that. I can't say this because this is like a deeply personal thing that a friend of mine had shared with me, and I'm like, what? Like this is terrible. Like I can't even believe that you had to deal with this in this day and age. And it's like, well, what are you gonna like? What am I going to do? So that still goes on, but we've definitely made strides and have to just keep on, just to make sure that people like are, I don't know, like cool, like nice, and they're not, but I don't know.
Well, and Starfox, and you guys have both hit on, a sign of the times. I mean, you literally have the same case, 40 years apart, minus a pregnancy.
Right. Right.
One got 4 years and one was on a live row, but due to sentence reconstruction, now he's just got life.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes. Boom. That's what I mean right there, unfortunately. So I think too, when you were talking, and also points that Brian hit on with the multiple marriages and, her liking to party and stuff, there's nothing wrong with liking to party. And if you don't love somebody, well, that's what happens in multiple marriages. Again, this is in the future, but back then, yeah, I mean, everybody thought the end all be all, it's the end of the world if you get divorced, or if you're a woman, you can't go out and party and stuff. So yeah, I think some of those things were probably stacked against her as well, especially again, being in the time frame where, women weren't necessarily looked at as equal to. Yeah, you have a ton of things stacked up against her, where I feel like, unfortunately, it would have been pretty easy for that dude to swindle his way out of that, especially if he was a womanizer and other women, were still potentially attracted to him, even though they might be like, oh, wow, he's a jerk. But then when brought into like trial or such, they could have been like, oh, well, yeah, he took me out to eat and such. And
right.
I don't know. I just feel like, yeah, a lot of things, unfortunately, were stacked against that poor woman.
And it was the part of it that when I read this, and it did, I have to say, like, it made me like, it was like a chuckle. Not that you're really going to chuckle about anything in a story like this, all right?
Mm-hmm.
But when he moved to California to marry, or whatever, moved to be with, he couldn't be married because he's still, if his wife is alive, he can't marry her because that'd be, so he can't even do that. But anyway, to be with the woman that Hallie had accused him, that supposedly found them together and had they were having an affair. She literally found them like romantically and physically involved. And he was like, well, I'm not gonna end the affair. Like, you're just gonna have to deal with it. And then he says, oh no, this was just a friend, and Hallie made this, she made this all up and blew it out of proportion just to make me look bad. But then he moves off with her like a couple weeks after Hallie's disappearance. Like, really, dude? Really? Piece of crap.
Yeah, that's straight up gnarly stuff right there for sure. Nightmare fuel, no pun intended, eh?
Right. So what, Brian, what do you have going on currently? And tell the viewers about what you do over on your channel, and, like get them familiarized with the great Brian.
Oh, you got the wrong Brian if you're looking.
No, I know I don't. Love you, Brian.
Well, if I make average, I'll be okay with that. That's a
So great.
It sounds like, Lord Starfox is going to come on. We're going to try to shed some light on that amazing Dogman thermal.
Yes.
Because that, to me, is right up there with like a Patterson Gimlin. That film's going to get some love and really get detailed. Yeah. And it's just right. Continue bringing more information. So, and we're going to chat a little bit about all the changes that have happened in my area. And so Bigfoot season has begun, and it started off with a big bang out there.
Really? What do you mean by that?
There's, like I mentioned a little earlier, we were talking, and there's a huge piece of, whether it's sewer or drainage pipe, it's probably 400 or 500 pounds. And I used to get peanut butter in it. And
right.
Once I got busted doing that, I started using the blue stones like our friend Kat had mentioned.
Right.
So last year, the pipe got moved 92 feet, I think I measured, and put on 2 trees so it wouldn't roll. And nobody could explain how it got moved. And then...
Amazing, right? Like, absolutely.
Yeah. And then
amazing.
And then this year, the last time I went out, there was a fish bowl that has been out there for I don't know how many years, but I was putting, small jars of peanut butter in that, and they would take them out of the fish bowl. So what I did was I had a full rehydration drink with me. I put 3 rocks in the fish bowl, and then I put the rehydration rock drink on top of the rocks in the fish bowl and put it in the pipe and put sticks around it so it wouldn't go anywhere. And the hydration drink was full. And I go out there 2 days ago, and the pipe is probably 150 feet away downhill.
Oh my gosh.
Into a couple trees, and it has an X on top of it. One tree I found, it's probably 3 or 4 inches in diameter, was snapped and laid across it. And then another tree about the same diameter was pushed over, and the root system is still half intact and making an X on top. And I'm like, holy cow. So I went up to the top of the hill where it was to take a picture, and the fish bowl is laying there, and my hydration drink was laying there, but the drink was empty, but the lid was still on, but the lid was screwed back on.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa.
My shoes almost came off when
Wild. Oh my God.
And there's so much deadfall, but there were 17-inch imprints in the leaves.
Whoa.
So I think, for whatever reason, they picked it up and carried it halfway down the hill and then put a big X on it. But stones were gone. So they took the drink out and either dumped it or whatever, put the cap back on, put that in the fish bowl together where the pipe was.
Wow.
And then the pipe went down the hill with the X on top.
Do you think that that they drank the drink?
They either drank it or took a sip and didn't like it and dumped it out. I don't know.
Or maybe they all share. Well, how many do you think that there were? I mean, there definitely, so there's the one with the 17. Was that the only print that you found?
It's the only print I found that day.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. But I mean, like at that.
Prints out there. And so there's a family out there, and they've been there for decades. Because there's somebody has sent me 2 of the Sasquatch Chronicles from the 80s and 90s, people talking about this area, and it's within 1 mile of what I'm at.
That is really cool.
So, and I found a 6-inch print last year that was next to a 17-inch print. So there's definitely a breeding family out there.
That's very cool.
Now, what I was worried about was maybe a different clan had come in, or more individuals, because all of the old tree structures were torn down.
Yes.
New ones up and bigger ones.
Yeah. I am a little bit worried about my home turf, not where I'm at now, on the Olympic Peninsula, but about what's going on back home on the Key Peninsula, because I've noticed things are different, and it's been much quieter. Actually, our friend Kat said, she could I take a look at your area again? Because I feel like there's some things that are changing. And I was like, sure. She'd done such a fantastic, amazing reading on it a couple months ago, maybe a year now. Or remember when she read both of our properties, Brian?
Yeah.
Yeah. So So she said, I know I just sent some changes and I didn't get the official report yet. So I don't want to, represent or, give any false information. But she said things are very different because there's a new leader. And now this one is more like no nonsense. There's none of this. She feels like, there's going to be none of this ridiculousness that was put up with when the other one was empowered. That's how this guy now feels. I don't know. We'll see. It's a little bit scary. Like, I don't think that I'm in danger, but I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't. But what does this mean? It's intense.
Yeah, when that idea was being tossed around out there, it's like, okay, it's different. Does that mean all the interaction's going to cease now because this one doesn't, like you said, put up with the nonsense or want attention?
Right.
But it definitely does make me reconsider going out by myself at night now, because now I don't know what to expect.
Right. Exactly. It is. It's, and that's the downside, I guess, right, to this, all the amazing things. But then there's that downside because we really don't know, and we don't know what exactly motivates them to do, what they do. And so it's got to be careful.
Yeah. I mean, and you as well, we can enjoy it while it's happening, but like you said, we don't know and understand. So at any time, the ride might be over.
Yeah, and then another friend of mine said, well, do I think that this is potentially happening because I'm spending so much time out here where it's so active in a different way? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe are they coming out here? I don't know. I guess, this will all remain to be seen. So any final thoughts, words from you, Lord Starfox?
Great stuff right there from both of you, for sure. I don't know the most about Sasquatch, so I am just sitting here listening for sure. And Mr. Barber, after I link up with my excellent guests on Friday that were the ones responsible for taking that beautiful video, I'll be able to definitely pop over and chill with you for a bit for sure. And just gnarly stuff right there for sure. I see no reason why that place isn't haunted by any means. And while I will be keeping you both in the darkness about my next two topics for sure. So I will give you just a little bit of light and give the audience some stuff to be happy about. Our next episode, we will be talking about, yes, there was no such thing as German or SS zombies, but there was a case of Russian zombies in the sense of, what a zombie would be minus the flesh-eating aspects. So some pretty gnarly stuff.
Whoa, that's going to be a lot, but I can't wait. Wow.
It's enticing.
Thank you guys for being here. Please head over to make sure you are subscribed, you have your notifications turned on over to Lord Starfox channel, and I will put their links again down in the final comments. And please also, with Brian Barber, go over to his channel and subscribe. And if you're not subscribed with me, please do. My name is Barb Hartman, Drama Bigfoot on YouTube. And I'm also on Facebook, as well as both of my co-hosts. So you guys have a great night.
Thank you so much. Love and appreciate you guys. And thanks for having me on board.
Right back at you.
Yes, of course, to both of you. We will all be sitting down again quite soon, and much love and appreciation to both of you.